sing, when we sing, we pray twice. When we sing, when we sing, when we sing, we are one. When we sing, when we sing, when we sing, we pray twice. When we sing, when we sing, when we sing, we are one. Shirul Adonai, 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 Shirul Adonai. When we sing, when we sing, when we sing, we pray twice. When we sing, when we sing, when we sing, we are one. When we sing, when we sing, when we sing, we pray twice. When we sing, when we sing, when we sing, we are one.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone. So good to be with you. So happy to be together this evening to celebrate Shabbat with song and with prayer and most importantly with each other. So glad that you're joining us this evening, both those of you that are with us on our website's streaming page and those of you that are joining us on Facebook Live. If you haven't yet had a chance to chime into the Facebook chat to let us know that you're here, please let us know. It feels so good to know who's praying with us tonight. This evening, we're going to be sharing the prayers of our service on the screen, so please make sure that you're able to see them. If you're worshiping from a book at home, we'll also try to let you know once in a while what page we're on in the physical copy of Mishkan Tefillah. Before we move into the lighting of the Shabbat candles tonight, there's a question that I want all of you to spend a little bit of time thinking about. I'll remind you a little bit later, but the question that I want to invite you to reflect on this Shabbat is, where do you feel safe? Where are the places that you feel safe? Do some thinking about that now, and if you want to chime into the Facebook chat box to let us know what that place is or what the circumstance is in which you feel safe, please let us know and share that with us. We'll come back and review some of those answers and talk a little bit more about the places we feel safe later in our service. And for now, I'm going to ask Didi to lead us in the lighting of the Shabbat candles.
As these Shabbat candles give light to all who behold them, so may we, by our lives, give light to all who behold us. As their brightness reminds us of the generations of Israel who've kindled light, so may we in our own day be among those who kindle light. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Shabbat.
We continue our service each week with Lecha Dodi. Come, my friend, to meet the bride. Come, my friend, to greet Shabbat. Lecha Dodi, Likrat Kala, B'nei Shabbat, Mekabela Lecha Dodi, Likrat Kala, B'nei Shabbat, Mekabela, Shamor v'Zachor, B'dibor Echad, Bishmianu El HaMiuchad, Adonai Echad, U'Shemo Echad, L'Shem U'Tiferet, V'Litchila, Lecha Dodi, Likrat Kala, B'nei Shabbat, Mekabela Lecha Dodi, Likrat Kala, B'nei Shabbat, Mekabela Likrat Shabbat, Lechu v'nelcha, Yehi Mekor HaBracha, Ve'rosh Mikedem Nesucha, Zol Ma'aseh B'machshava Tehila, Lecha Dodi, Likrat Kala, B'nei Shabbat, Mekabela Lecha Dodi, Likrat Kala, B'nei Shabbat, Mekabela Hitoreri, Kiva Orech, Uri, Shir Daveri, Kevod Adonai, Alaich Miglal Lecha Dodi, Likrat Kala, B'nei Shabbat, Mekabela Lecha Dodi, Likrat Kala, B'nei Shabbat, Mekabela. If you are comfortable doing so, we rise and face the entrance. Boi v'shalom, ateret ba'ala, Gam b'simcha u'b'tzola, Toch emunei am segula, Boi chala, Lecha Dodi, Likrat Kala, B'nei Shabbat, Mekabela Lecha Dodi, Likrat Kala, B'nei Shabbat, Mekabela.
Continuing now with the Baruch Hu. If you're following along in a book at home, Baruch Hu is on page 28. We continue with this call to worship.
Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMevorach, Baruch Adonai HaMevorach Leolam Va'ed.
On page 31 of our books, praise to you, Adonai, our God, from whom the evening flows. Your wisdom sets the way on which time and season glide. Your breath guides the sail of the stars. Creator of the tide of time and light, you guide the current of day into night. As heaven spans to infinity, you set its course for eternity. Praise to you, Adonai, our God, from whom the evening flows. Baruch Ata Adonai, HaMa'ariv Aravim.
Adonai echad. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai echad. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai echad. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai echad. Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto, Leolam Vaed. Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto, Leolam Vaed. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai echad. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai echad. Please be seated. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavcha u'b'chol nafshecha u'b'chol meodecha, ve'hayu hadvarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavecha hayom al levavecha veshinantam levanecha v'dibarta bam b'shivtecha b'veitecha uv'lechtecha v'derech uv'shochmecha uv'kumecha ug'shartam le'ot al yadecha v'hayu letotafot b'neinecha וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם.
So friends, if you have not yet had a chance to chime into the Facebook chat box with your answer to our Shabbat question this week, our Shabbat question is, where do you feel safe? Tell us a little bit about the places or the circumstances in which you feel safe. If you're comfortable sharing, we'll take a look at those answers and share them a little bit later in our service. For now, we're going to continue in our books. If you're following on the book, this reading can be found on page 39, this book to prepare us for the song and the triumph of Mi Chamocha. Standing on the parted shores of history, we still believe what we were taught before ever we stood at Sinai's foot, that wherever we go it is eternally Egypt, that there is a better place, a promised land, that the winding way to that promise passes through the wilderness, that there is no way to get from here to there except by joining hands, marching together.
kamocha ba'elim Adonai, mi kamocha nedor b'kodesh, mi kamocha ba'elim Adonai, mi kamocha nedor b'kodesh. No
So beautiful. Thank you. So I also want to thank those of you that have taken a second to chime in on the chat to let us know where the places are and what the times are that you feel safe in your life. Just taking a look at some of the responses now, it looks like there are a lot of you who agree that home is a place that you feel especially safe and secure. I'm seeing that again and again in people's answers, that that's the place where you go to feel sheltered and safe. I also noticed that for a lot of the folks that are chiming in, it's not just a specific place, but in the company of certain people, those you love, relatives, close friends, that it's in those relationships that you feel at home. And the third category that I'm seeing in these responses is that people at times feel at home in experiences, particularly spiritual experiences, outside in the beauty of nature, in your spiritual home, at our congregation or at another, or when immersed in the spiritual experience of prayer, reading the Psalms, or reflecting alone. However we find safety, this is the time in our service, just as the sun is going down, when the structure of the liturgy invites us to think about the ways that we feel shelter in time and shelter in the presence of God. As the darkness begins to gather, we reflect about the places and the times and the people in whose company we feel safe and secure, and we draw all of them around us for comfort as we continue into Shabbat. We'll continue now into a musical setting of Vishamru. We continue in song.
Vishamru v'nei Yisrael et HaShabbat la'asot et HaShabbat l'dorotam berit olam. Vishamru v'nei Yisrael et HaShabbat la'asot et HaShabbat l'dorotam berit olam. Beini uvein b'nei Yisrael oti leolam. Veshamru b'nei Yisrael et HaShabbat la'asot et HaShabbat l'dorotam berit olam. Veshamru b'nei Yisrael et HaShabbat la'asot et HaShabbat l'dorotam berit olam. Ki sheishet yamim asa Adonai et HaShamayim ve'et haaretz. Veshamru b'nei Yisrael et HaShabbat la'asot et HaShabbat l'dorotam berit olam. Veshamru b'nei Yisrael et HaShabbat la'asot et HaShabbat l'dorotam berit olam. Uvayon השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם, ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם.
Our service continues as we join together with the Amidah. If you feel comfortable in rising, please feel free to join in. Adonai sifatai tifta ufi yagita hilatecha. Adonai, open my lips that my mouth may declare your glory. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu, Elohei Avotenu v'imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzhak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, El Hagadol, Hagibor, V'Hanora, El Elyon, Omel Hasadim Tovim, V'Konei HaKol, V'Zocher Hasdei Avot V'Imahot, Mevi Gula Livnei V'neihem, Leman Shemo B'Yachava, Melech Ozer U'Moshiach U'Magen, Baruch Atah Adonai, Magen Avraham, Ezrat Sarah, Atah Gibor Le'olam Adonai, Mechayei HaKol, Mechata Lefcho Hiyashia, Morid Hatal, Mechael Chachim Bechesed, Mechayei HaKol Berachamim Rabim, Somech Noflim Vorfech Olim, Umastir Asurim, Umekayem Emunato Lishenei Afar, Michamocha Bal Gevurot, Umidom Elach, Melech Memit Umechayem, Umatzmiya Yeshua, V'nemar Talech Shayan HaKol, Baruch Atah Adonai, Mechayei HaKol, Atah Kadosh, Shimcha Kadosh, Ukedoshim Chol Yom Al Yechalu HaSela, Baruch Atah Adonai, Ha'el HaKadosh.
May these hours of rest and renewal open our hearts to joy and our minds to truth. May all who struggle find rest on this day. May all who suffer find solace. May all who hurt find healing on this day. May all who despair find purpose. May all who hunger find fulfillment on this day, and may this day fulfill its promise. Baruch atah Adonai, Mekadesh HaShabbat.
Say shalom, b'imromav, hu yaseh shalom, hu yaseh shalom aleinu, yaseh shalom aleinu, say shalom, b'imromav. Say shalom, We ask for peace on earth, and we say amen. Imeru, amen. Imeru, amen. We ask, raise our voice as one, and we say amen.
We take a moment for personal silent prayer.
This evening, as we continue with our prayers, we listen to this musical refrain expressing the hopes that the words of our mouths and the meditations of our hearts will always be acceptable in God's sight.
Vihu leratzon imrefi vehegyon libi lefanecha Adonai suri Adonai suri Vegali.
I know that the prayer and the meditations that many of us share this evening are on behalf of those near to us and dear to us who are in need of healing on this Shabbat. And we certainly hope that those prayers and meditations are heard. This is the time that we turn our thoughts to the members of our congregation and of our community who find themselves in need of healing. Tonight we offer this Mishaberach for David Askenaz, Marcia Block, Bradley Borden, Melba Berman, Jennifer Carey, Michelle Cohen, Miles Cohn, David Kottner, Richard Dana, Gregory Edmond, Ann Graubart, Vicki Greenberg, Jerry Hooks, Sarah James, Lawrence Levy, Velma Lingo, Raul Ramirez, Edward Simmons, Melinda Scholar, Angelica Taylor, Marcia Tushida, Roger Williams, Chaim Levish Velvo Ben Sheva, Esther Batrut, Gelka Nachama Batli Bachaya, and all of those who are suffering with physical illness, emotional distress, and pain. On their behalf, we offer this Mishaberach.
Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov.
Friends, just a few brief announcements and updates before we do a little bit of learning together tonight. I want to begin with words of gratitude to Nathan Malik, who's helping us with our service behind the scenes on AV Tech. I know you can't see him, but he is there behind the scenes working very hard to make sure that all of you can see and hear all of us. We're really grateful to him and to everyone that helps makes these services happen and makes them accessible to our audience of viewers and worshipers here in town and across the country. I want to invite you to join our congregation this Sunday night, July the 19th, 7 p.m. for an online trivia night. This is open and available to everyone, a fun and challenging trivia night that will feature a variety of experiences beyond your average game night. But you do have to register in advance. We need to know that you're coming so we can make the appropriate arrangements. There's more information on our website for how you can register for this Sunday's game night. Also coming up on the calendar, our beloved organist and familiar longtime Emanu family member Ann Frobeater will be hosting an evening that we're calling a Night with Ann Frobeater. That's Thursday, July 23rd, 6:30 p.m. You can watch that musical presentation the same way that you're watching us tonight on the streaming page on the Emanu website or on Facebook Live. Please do come and join us. It will be a treat for your ears and your heart. Lastly, a reminder that our clergy team and our entire Emanu staff remains here available and accessible to you. If there's anything you need, pastoral support or any sort of assistance, please don't think twice about reaching out and letting us know how we can do our best to be a helping hand. It is really important and really precious to us that we get to do this work. So please do let us know how we can be of service. And so now, friends, I want to share a word or two about our Torah portion and where we find ourselves this week in Torah. So this week we are, our Torah portion is actually a double portion. We have two portions of Torah. The portion is called Parashat Matot Maseh, two Torah portions, Matot and Maseh. And like I always tell the bar mitzvah kids I work with, a double portion of Torah is just like a double serving of cake. So we get two big chunks of Torah to work with this week. Parshat Matot Maseh also has the distinction of being the last portion in the book of Numbers. So as we read it, we're getting ready to move context from the end of Numbers into the beginning of the book of Deuteronomy, into the last sprint that the Israelites are making toward the border of the Promised Land and their new lives, their new home, and the territory that God has promised them. So as the Israelites are getting ready to make their way into the Promised Land, Moses is listing a few conditions and details and stipulations for the way that they're to plan the societies and the communities that they'll set up in their new home. So God is giving them all sorts of specific instructions about what the territory will look like and how it should be governed and how it should be structured. This is sort of whatever the equivalent of urban planning would have been 4,000 years ago. The first thing God says to the Israelites is that they need to set aside some land for the Levites, the descendants of the tribe of Levi, to graze their livestock there. The Levites were the ones who assisted with the functions of the tabernacle, where the priests oversaw the function of worship, but they weren't allowed territory for their own permanent residence. So God tells them about setting aside some territory for the Levites to graze. And lastly, God says, there's one more thing I want you to do when you set up residence in the Promised Land. When you settle in this new territory, I want you to establish 6 special towns, 6 special cities called Arei Miklat, cities of refuge. The cities of refuge, God tells the people through Moses, were designed for a very specific but somewhat macabre function. The purpose of the cities of refuge were designed to protect someone who had accidentally committed manslaughter, someone who had killed another person by accident. Now, it's a little strange, but God makes it very clear that it's of the utmost importance that the Israelites set up these cities to protect the person who had accidentally killed someone else, to give him a place to flee for his own safety so that he can keep from being attacked as a result of the blood feuds and the revenge killings which must have run rampant in the ancient world. So these 6 cities, these Arei Miklat, were designed as a way to protect criminals from mob violence while allowing the legal system to do its work. So although it sounds surprising, the cities of refuge had a very important legal and spiritual purpose. to uphold the rule of law, even as they sheltered criminals within their borders. So, on the one hand, it's a very strange thing for the Torah to prioritize in the context of all this other work and all these other instructions that Moses is issuing to the Israelites to plan for the new home they'll occupy in the Promised Land. It issues these commandments about the cities of refuge in greater detail and at greater length than so many other things the Israelites would have to do when they are imagining and planning for the society they would set up on the other side of the Jordan. So that's one whole set of strange characteristics about this portion. But the other thing that I don't want us to overlook is that the instructions about the cities of refuge are also strange for another reason. The entire plot of the Torah has been leading us gradually but unavoidably toward the Promised Land. And the charter for these 6 cities of refuge force us to acknowledge that the Promised Land that the Israelites have been imagining and dreaming about and hoping about for hundreds of years, the Promised Land is not a utopia. Even before they cross the river, the Israelites have to concede that the territory they're about to inhabit, even though it was promised to them by God, isn't going to be a paradise where there's no more struggle or disappointment. Even before they get there, they're given for a blueprint for these special 6 cities, which contains encoded inside it the unavoidable truth that there will be pain and there will be suffering and loss, even in the Promised Land. Even in the Holy Land, promised on oath by God to Abraham and the children of Israel, even there will be unjust bloodshed. Now, you would think, perhaps, that these instructions and this cold reality that the Israelites have to face would be stressful, demoralizing, and very upsetting. But there's a deeper purpose at play, and that is that Moses, by giving these instructions, is arming the people with a new sort of theology, a new way of thinking about God. If you can imagine what it might have been like to be one of those ancient Israelites, entering an unseen new land that you've been hearing about your entire life, and then you get there, and something terrible happens to someone you love. You can imagine that might lead you to think, how could God do this? I thought God was supposed to protect us. What did we do to deserve this pain? So the first purpose, I think, of the sanctuary cities is to shape the people's understanding about what God is and what God isn't, how God relates to humanity and how God doesn't. Human suffering is not evidence that God doesn't exist. Human suffering is not evidence that God doesn't exist. This is such an important lesson for us to learn today, too. Terrible things happen all the time. Unthinkable accidents and mistakes that have permanent effects on our lives and our families. The tiniest change in circumstances can have literally life-changing effects on us and the people we love. Now, Moses could have tried to perpetuate the myth of the utopian promised land. He could have said, as soon as we cross that river, there will be no more suffering and no more pain, no accidental death or negligent homicide. And that might have been a more effective sales job to help keep the people committed to the journey and excited about the destination, but he doesn't do that because he knows it's not true. Moses' purpose is to inoculate the people against a certain kind of religious doubt and to correct the mistaken idea that faith in God will protect you from calamity and pain. He's not trying to create a generation of followers whose faith will ignore reality. That's the first thing that he wants to make sure he does to the people that will survive him, and it's an important lesson for us as well. Closing our eyes to reality isn't helpful. Instead, we ought to start with the assumption that reality will bring disappointment and pain. Moses' lesson must have been terribly disappointing and difficult for the people to hear, but he had to share it with them because he loved them. And he knew that they would have to learn sooner or later how to navigate through a world where things get broken, where plans fail and people get sick. Even with the best of intentions, people we love will suffer. And it doesn't help for us to pretend about the nature of the universe or the nature of God. So what does help? Making plans. That's the second important lesson from this portion this week. We can imagine how people might have complained to Moses that his plans for the cities of refuge to shelter people who had committed homicide were a waste of resources. But Moses wants the people to know that given that the world is uncertain, given that all of us will get hurt at some time or another by things we couldn't expect, given all of that, it's no use to spend our time fretting about the chaos of the universe. What is worthwhile instead is to take time to plan and prepare for what will happen when the whirlwind hits our homes and how we will react. We've talked a lot about living in that mode these days in our congregational home. There's a phrase that we use all the time when we're making our plans for making our way through the pandemic and, God willing, back into something that resembles normal congregational life again. We'll hope for the best, but plan for the worst. We do that every day to make sure that the future that we'll guide you into will be safe and sustainable as it can possibly be. Now, planning for the inevitable, even though you cannot predict it, will help make us a bit more prepared when the inevitable happens. But the added bonus is that the process of planning helps us remember what matters to us and why. In the 12th century, when Maimonides was analyzing this Torah portion, he taught in his commentary that these cities of refuge would also have had to have clean running water, proper sanitation facilities, safe and passable roadways, a functioning economy in which the refugee could find work. That imaginative exercise that he undertook helped him create a lucid expression of his Jewish values, helped him articulate what mattered to him in his urban life in the 12th century. Health and safety, an opportunity for commerce to flourish, and human dignity to be defended. Maimonides' dreams about the cities of refuge provided an opening for him to enunciate all of these different ways that social responsibility could be expressed. A little while ago, I invited you to think about the places where you feel safe, the people with whom you feel safe, and the circumstances in which you feel safe. When you did that imagining, I hope that you came up with some very concrete pictures about what those experiences are that you felt when you felt safe and secure and taken care of. These days, so much is unpredictable. So much is difficult or impossible for us to anticipate. But it's not impossible for us to dream, and our dreams can become plans. So many of us are having to make very difficult choices these days about how we spend our time, our money, our energy, because all of those commodities are harder to come by these days. Certainly, we can all make plans about what will happen if we or our family or our loved ones or our workplace will be affected by illness. But I want to suggest that it can be deeply therapeutic for us to do this planning with the same kind of thinking that went into your reflections a few moments ago about where you feel safe. Identifying the places and the circumstances under which you feel secure. You can work to engineer that experience more deeply into your everyday life. The things you do, the people you're with, the places you spend time, the ways that you use your energy, those things that soothe your soul. For those of you that talked about feeling safe at home or with your families and friends, how can you bolster and reinforce those places and experiences so the places and settings that comfort you will be sustained and reinforced to be as effective as possible? The resources that we put into planning for the future are never wasted. When Maimonides taught what he did about the cities of refuge, he wasn't just sketching a blueprint for a place for someone to hide. He was imagining what it meant and felt like to live in a healthy, sustainable city. And even if there were no killers who needed to flee there, he had still dreamed about a just and principled Jewish community, which itself has deep and profound value. But had they not been built, had Maimonides and the thinkers who came before him not done the thinking about what kind of place would make someone who was endangered feel safe, we would have been profoundly ill-equipped when the violence and suffering that always exists in the world touched our lives. It's not irreligious, it's not faithless for us to plan and prepare for what will happen if things get difficult. It doesn't cast doubt on God's role as a source of goodness in the world. Because what I want you to remember is that God's presence isn't a thing that prevents pain. God's presence is a thing that stays with us to offer comfort and solace despite the pain. Magical thinking can't save us from suffering. Magical hope can't prevent or cure disease. But the message from this portion and the ways that its exercise of imagination has played out over the centuries and the miles of Jewish existence is that our work as Jews of conscience and Jews of vision is to visualize the kind of place we'd like to live, and then spend our time and our energy and resources making it real. Imagine what kind of life, what kind of setting, what kind of home you'd most like to build, and spend some time now preparing to build it and make it real. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. And so, friends, as we continue doing the critical work of imagination and memory, the work of the heart's love and connection, we take just a moment to do the sacred work of remembering those we have loved and lost. And so, as we prepare for Kaddish, our thoughts now turn to those who have departed the earth. We take just a moment now to remember those whom our friends and neighbors have lost, the martyrs of our people whose graves are unmarked, and those of every race and nation whose lives have been a blessing to humanity. As we remember them, we meditate on the meaning of love and loss, of life and death. We take just a moment now to do our own work of memory. We think of our loved ones whom death has recently taken from us, those who died at this season in years past, and those whom we have drawn into our hearts with our own. On this Shabbat, we recall with sadness and sympathy the names of Frederick Ricky Blaine Hodgkins and Shella Prizant Plastrick, who were laid to rest in recent days. To their names, we add these, the names of those whose yahrzeits fall at this season. Together, we remember Sue Baird, Fred Berg, Leonore Berman, B. Berman, Ruth Braun, Mitchell Irwin Breer, David Brown, Paul Brown, John Brush, Dory Bull, Anna Kaplan, Sheva Kogan, Shirley Cohen, Abe M. Davis, Sonia Davidovitz, Nathaniel Doron, George Edelstein, Florence Edwards, Sadie Ellis, Helene Fallick, Rachel Fetterman, Lisa Ann Federow, Mildred Besser-Fillion, Michael Lawrence Fink, Lucy Fiss, Helen Oberfram, Lillian Frank, Mary D. Gates, Stephen Richard Gans, Maurice Garber, Barry Gerber, Harold Goldberg, Melvin Goodman, Dorothy Grant, Miriam Graubart, Esther Greenberg, Ferenc Grossman, Eudice Grossman, Esther Grossman, Mamie King Harris, Lorraine Isaacs Hofeller, Harry Holzberg, Henry Jacob Horowitz, Dorothy Inselberg, Mrs. Kalantarove, Mona Faye Camion, David Kapeloff, Joseph Cates, Joseph L. Keeper, Rose Kemeny, Sally Kesselman, Jean Klein, Walter Klein, Perry B. Klein, Cami Noller, Mose Nathan Krafchek, Abe Laves, Ronnie Light, Yvonne Littell, Charlotte Shaler Lynch, Leo Marte, Leon Miller, Helen Mullen, Rita Bell Morgan, Esther Moskowitz, Saul Norman, Lillian Perstein, Sarah Rabinow-Pesikoff, Jackie Proler, Ray Rachofsky, Perla Roth, Mervyn Rosenbaum, Alan Rumelt, Harold C. Sachs, S. Sankari, Ruth Schnitzer, Amy Schwartz, Joseph Siegel, Andrew Lionel Seelig, Martin Sherman, Dorothy Shields, Esther Silber, Harold Slavin, Carl Solomon, Bryna Bernice Stallero, Jack Stein, Nanette Steinhardt, Jay Sterling, Francisca Stern, Solomon Still, Meyer Tillum, Ellis Tichy, Sam Wagner, Rochelle Wachowski, Lynn Lewis Webb, Tina Weiss, Sarah Wexler, and Abe Zinn. The memories of all of them are with us as we continue with the words of Kaddish. If you're following along in a prayer book, Kaddish can be found on page 294. If it's comfortable for you to rise as we recite Kaddish, I invite you to do so. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabba, ve'alma divrach yerutei v'yamlich malchutei, v'chayechon v'yomechon v'chay dechol Beit Yisrael, ba'agadla u'vizman kari v'imru amen. Yehei shmei Rabba mevarach le'olam u'lalmei almaya, yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitba'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh, v'yithadar v'yitale v'yithalal shemei kudsha barichu, le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, Da'amiran be'alma v'imru amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shmaya, v'chayim alenu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. V'oseh shalom b'mromav, hu ya'aseh shalom alenu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen.
Oseh shalom bimromav, hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'imru, imru, amen.
So from the work of memory, we now turn to the work of sanctification and gratitude as we continue with the blessings of Kiddush and Motzi.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hagofen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu. Shabbat kodsho be'ahava u'ratzon inilanu. Zikaron lema'aseh bereshit, Yom tehila b'mikra'ei kodesh, Zecher letziat Mitzrayim. Emanu v'charta, ve'atanu kidashta mikol ha'amim. Bat kodshecha le'ahava u'ratzon inhaltanu. Baruch atah Adonai mekadesh haShabbat. Amen. L'chaim.
Hayon.
L'chaim. And as we make our way into Shabbat filled with gratitude and hope and joy that this evening brings us, may we do so propelled by the vision of the things and the places and the people that make us feel safe. Let's gather them around us to increase the feeling of security and comfort in our lives, and may we strive to do what we can to be a source of safety and comfort for others. Amen. Shabbat Shalom, everyone.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.